I picked myself up a trail bike at the start of this year and have been dipping my toes into the mad world of dirt riding. So far, it's been one-day trips into the bush, but one weekend at the start of August I took the plunge and signed up for the Frozen Butt Adventure Ride 2017. The Frozen Butt Adventure Ride brings together the most talented adventure riders in Australia for 3 days of jumps, power slides and endless wheelies. Okay, maybe I'm exaggerating just a little bit. The Frozen Butt Adventure Ride actually has a very noble intention. Its creator, the great Glenn Currington, works tirelessly to raise awareness and funds for cystic fibrosis, and the Frozen Butt Adventure Ride is a fantastic way to support that cause. The group was split in two. The road riders were left in Glenn's safe hands, and we dirt riders were left under the supervision of our own fearless leader, Dusty Taylor. Dusty had planned out a sensational 3 days for us, which included 1,200 kilometres of clay, rocks, sand, rivers, puddles, and occasionally some tar. There's no such thing as the perfect bike, and there were lots of interpretations of the best way to get the Frozen Butt Adventure Ride done. We had chook chasers, super duper Tenerays, a smattering of KTM beasties, and of course, a whole lot of DR650s. As diverse as the bikes were their riders, and we Frozen Butt riders hail from an equally broad range of professions. We had landscapers. We had documentary filmmakers. We had geologists. And we had a surprisingly large number of frogmen. So that's us, a motley crew of fundraising adventure seekers. Let's get into the action on the Frozen Butt Adventure Ride 2017. Day 1 commenced for us from the beautiful Wiseman's Ferry in Sydney's north. The true believers had been riding since 7 a.m, but we Sydney types thought a sleep in and a leisurely cappuccino would be a more civilised way to start the day. By mid-morning we were all assembled and it was time to take on some trails. Our destination by day's end was the old gold mining town of Hill End, 250 kilometres to our west. We kicked off the day with some sensational trails in and around the Gardens of Stone National Park. Before we could blink, we'd arrived at the Gardens of Stone themselves, a spectacular location for a morning tea break. After a brief morning tea stop and a rare opportunity to take off our helmets, we took on some more amazing trails on the way out of the Gardens of Stone. As we continued to make our way towards Capertee and through Turon Gates and towards Sofala, the roadside scenery was truly epic. And the riding. The slippery, rocky trails following the river were some of the most rewarding riding I've ever done on the WR. A sensational choice of roads, Dusty. Now, Hill End is a pretty isolated part of the world and doesn't have a permanent petrol station. The little WR didn't have enough petrol to get me back to civilization the next morning, so I had to be a bit creative. Enter my saviour Daryl. Local legend and fellow adventurer Daryl raided Nana's old jerry cans to get me back to civilization. Thanks, Nana. Now, I know Nana didn't need the petrol for the lawnmower because half a dozen kangaroos were keeping the grass nice and low in Nana's front yard. On the morning of day 2, our mission was to get from Hill End to the Canobolas State Forest via the famous Bridle Track, a narrow, winding track straddling the hillside which has been part of the landscape for over 150 years. Generally only suitable for four-wheel drives and bikes, the riding is challenging and the scenery absolutely stunning. Now, I'd made it through day 1 without a stack, no problem, but unfortunately the Bridle Track snuck up on me. I let my mate Daniel past, took my eye off the road, caught an off-camber rock, and before I knew it, I was taking my first soil sample. Unfortunately for me, I was to take my eyes off the ball again not long after. When I turned the corner and saw my mate Dan waiting there with his camera ready, I think it was almost a foregone conclusion that I was going for a swim. By late morning, the group had triumphantly arrived at Canobolas State Forest. Canobolas could not have been any more different to the Bridle Track in terms of terrain, but it was no less challenging with pine needles and seed pods giving the already slippery red clay a mind of its own. It's hard to tell from the camera, but this cheeky little section of clay caught more than one or two of us out as we tried to make our way up the hill. As if the scenery hadn't been beautiful enough through the morning, we burrowed our way deep into the Canobolas trails in search of the Federal Falls. "Oh, a 100-metre walk from the trails," our fearless leader Dusty advised us. 100 vertical metres later, we'd reached the beautiful falls. Legend has it there's a car park a few metres the other side of the falls with easy access. But that's not our way, we were on the frozen butt adventure ride. The bushwalk certainly summoned an epic appetite in all of us. and it's almost as if Dusty planned it that way. Dusty's family welcomed us into their nearby home and cooked a feast of kings for 30 ravenous adventure riders and our tar riding brethren. The food was delicious, and all the funds raised also went to the charity. What an amazing bunch of people. Thank you, Dusty and family. The day was far from over, and Dusty had organised one more treat for us before the day was finished. A meeting head-on with the Macquarie River. Now, I'm not going to lie, I was a little nervous about the idea of crossing a full-blown river on the bike. It was covered in slippery rocks and there was a solid stream. But as we'd seen so many times already over the weekend, when you're with such a great bunch of blokes, there's no reason to fear and everyone's got your back. Blokes stood in the freezing river for about 20 minutes straight, helping every one of us slide and slosh our way across the river. I'm sure more than one bike, including mine, would have ended up in the drink without the watching eye of some mates behind me. Thanks, fellas. Day 3 started with a ride along a strange black substance which appeared to be a mix of rocks and tar, smoothly laid out in long, straight patches. We also saw a number of four-wheeled transportation devices, appearing to transport multiple life forms across the terrain in relative comfort. These were strange and exciting concepts for the group, having travelled via more rugged means the past 2 days. The first 2 hours of the day were stunning. The tar flowed through the countryside left and right and guided us safely north to our next challenge. By this stage, we were nearing the last afternoon of our intrepid journey, but Dusty had one more treat in store for us before we began to part ways back to our loved ones. Before our last little challenge though, we traversed a whole bunch of beautiful back roads through typical New South Wales farm country. As you can see, cattle just roaming on the side of the road and plenty of cowpats to dodge as we made our way to the Commission Trail. The Commission Trail is a 70-kilometre stretch of loose pebbles and sandy sections, connecting Jerry's Plains at the north with the Putty Road in the south. By this time, we'd all covered over 1,000 kilometres and there were certainly some tired muscles. The Commission Trail was slippery and littered with blind corners. I think we all found a scary corner or two on the trail, and unfortunately, one of them brought our mate Jason unstuck. Jason clipped a tree and ended up down an embankment, in a bit of trouble but much to our relief, conscious and not in too much pain. The way a number of the gents on the ride sprang into action and did everything from comforting Jace, getting help, securing his bike and working with the authorities to get him out safely was truly inspiring. It was incredible to watch, and it certainly made me think seriously about what I need to do to make sure I'm ready in such a situation. Thankfully, the rest of the trip home went off without a hitch, and the Sydney group got home late Sunday. I was stoked to have completed my first multi-day adventure on the little WR and was chuffed with how it performed. Another massive thank you to Glenn, Dusty and all the boys for a weekend of riding I'll remember for a long time. See you all next year.